selection followed by the pound sign. Now,
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the disclaimer. That's right, the disclaimer. This American apple pie institution known as parental discretion will cleanse any sense of innuendo or sarcasm from the lyrics which might actually make you think, and will also insult your intelligence at the same time. So, protect your family. This album contains explicit depictions of things which are real. These real things are commonly known as life. So, if it sounds sarcastic, don't take it seriously. If it sounds dangerous, do not try this at home or at all. And if it offends you, just don't listen to it.
Son of a bitch.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster. A real gangsta-ass nigga plays his cards right. A real gangsta-ass nigga never runs his fucking mouth, cause real gangsta-ass niggas don't start fights.
I bet you didn't know science could feel like pure magic. Introducing Elixir by Sirona, the world's greatest health revolution. What is Elixir, and what's the secret behind it? Picture a team of the world's most brilliant scientists, working tirelessly with patented and proprietary technology and techniques to create groundbreaking nanoformulas that bypass your digestive tract entirely, absorbing directly into the body, sublingually, under the tongue. The hero of the Elixir formula is nano-sized glutathione, your body's master antioxidant. And because glutathione is highly unstable, if swallowed, it will simply be destroyed in the stomach acids. And liposomal glutathione doesn't solve the issue either, as it's mostly unusable and does not get absorbed properly. Simply put, glutathione in capsule form, or even skincare products. Our scientists, using our proprietary nano process, have found a way to make a highly potent, highly absorbable combination of hyaluronic acid, collagen, resveratrol, glutathione, and vitamin B5, creating the world's most unique, proprietary formula, giving before and after results that have some people claiming that we've literally discovered the fountain of youth. Are you ready to unlock the power of advanced science for your wellness journey by ditching the old, ineffective supplements and switching to stabilized nano? As you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Aren't you tired of wasting money on supplements that have almost zero bioavailability or effectiveness in the body, or supplements that don't even have the ability to detox at the cellular level and even cross the blood-brain barrier because they're not truly nano-sized? Aren't you tired of even liquid supplements that are water-based and highly unstable, not delivering the potency you need? Join the Sirona movement today, and let's make magic happen, one drop at a time. Sirona, because looking and feeling young never gets old. Order yours today.
Today it is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 on the state. So as long as you guys are good, we're good.
Don't want the echo.
Are you good? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is
There's a slight echo, but
did you select echo cancellation?
that's on. Suppression's on.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, somebody else said in your chat on TrueStream, there's no sound, and then they said now there is. I don't know if it's just it's something weird that where people are coming on and at first there's no sound, because that's what it looks like to me. I don't know, because everything's fine on this end.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I just haven't done this with eCam before. I'm trying to send it to too many to all these different platforms, but I don't know if I can use eCam and Rumble Studio at the same time.
We'd be able to. I mean, we've almost got it. There's just.
I mean, as far as I know, it's working, guys.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay, well, if it sounds good to the audience, we'll deal with the echo.
We just have an echo on our
If we're the only ones hearing it, then that's fine.
We'll roll with it.
I don't hear an echo. Maybe somebody could put in the chat on any of the channels, you know, if they're hearing an echo. As far as everything goes on my end, everything looks good. On the meters, I'm watching everything on the screen. It looks good. It sounds good to me. I don't know.
Okay.
Although I will say, Scott, you're a little quieter than Joe.
Oh, well, I'm generally a little quieter than Joe. I'll try to speak up a bit. Is that better?
A little bit, but yeah, it's significantly quieter than Joe.
Oh shit! Again.
There's Carol. All right. Well, the good thing is, folks, Ethan's going to be doing most of the talking this evening. so that helps.
I have to. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What did I sign up for? What in the devil did I sign up for?
We had such a good conversation the other day, and I thought, damn, this needs to be on a show. And we were talking about the Luciferian impulse. We were talking about the origins of Lucifer, the confusion between who's Satan, who's Lucifer, and even got into Ahriman a little bit. But
Yeah. Are you using a lapel mic?
yes,
Can you just take it? You sound like you're talking into a pillow. Can you just take it out and just use it like a microphone, just talking to it?
I am. Is that any better?
Way better.
Is yours green?
Yeah, it's green.
There you
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That works.
Okay, well, we'll roll with
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, that's 1,000 times better.
go. Perfect.
Yeah, I've never been a
Well,
big fan of lapel mics. I would love to use them because it's so much easier for me, especially, on stage and even here in the studio, rather than having this boom arm with the microphone in front of me. But lapel mics are incredibly unreliable and a complete pain in the ass.
It does, yeah. Well, Scott's got a whole new. He has a lot of disco suits, and he has a lot of lapels now. So
Yeah.
he's really trying to ease into being able to communicate and still wear.
Did you get that with your Lucifer wings? Is that what that was? So when you do drag,
Sure, it's user error. We were struggling with the gain earlier, but we got them evened out. I don't know what's going on.
yeah.
I guess this one gain is turned down, but
There you go.
we'd have to figure that out.
I mean,
we want to give a quick shout out to Carol Friesen because we are here at her Heaven and Earth Sanctuary in Costa Rica. I think she's watching.
It's amazing.
It's absolutely amazing down here. So thank you, Carol, so much. And she just took us on a cool little ride today up to go check out the town that's above us. So we're just happy to be here. So.
In paradise. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
nice, good stuff. So, well, where do you guys want to start? I mean, we've got this is a big topic. It's I can tell you this right now. For most people, if you're tuning into this and you have any whatsoever lower emotional attachment to the programming from historical religious teachings and their perspective and viewpoints and what they've fed the entire world for thousands of years, you might get a little butthurt by this. I'm letting you know because we're letting the whole cat out of the bag, not just the tail or the whiskers this time. It's the whole cat, and you're going to see exactly how bad you've been deceived and lied to by because this all starts at the Vatican, right? They're the ones that created the common perception today of who and what Satan and Lucifer actually are. They're two totally different things, and they've not only have they lied about what those two different things are individually, but they've also created this lie that they're basically one and the same entity and they are anything but.
Now we're cutting in and out. I just can't seem to get past these audio issues.
I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with, all the streaming you're streaming to a bunch of different stuff. Because, this obviously the setup here in this studio is always the same. Nothing's changed. I don't even touch the dials. I literally turn the power on.
Laptop mic? Okay, let's try.
We're going to try to switch mics.
Okay. So if you guys could put it in the comments just so we can figure this out before we really get started, is this an audio issue just with Joe and Scott's microphone, or is it an audio issue overall, the whole entire thing? That's what we need to know.
I don't know if we could. I don't think we can switch it.
Oh, we can't access this. Well, the settings are right. Hit the wheel there.
Well, I'll try it. Oh,
there we go. We're going to switch mics, see if this helps.
Okay, someone said Joe is loud, everyone else is quiet. I know I'm not quiet. There's no way I'm quiet. I'm the loudest one. I'm watching the meters here. I'm the loudest one.
Okay, can you hear us any better now?
I mean, yeah, I can hear you. It sounded a little bit louder. Okay. Maggie said audio issues with Scott and Joe.
Okay. And we switched mics, so we're no longer on the labs.
Okay, I think
Some
that
people are
person.
saying good.
Yeah, I'm thinking that person was just basically saying that Scott, your volume was lower, but I think we already fixed that, so we just need to move on.
Okay, sounds good.
Because we've literally now had an intro of 15 minutes of
Yeah,
sound checking live on air.
exactly.
So anyway, somebody's saying Scott and Ethan are super low. That guys,
see that.
it's got to be the channels that you're listening to it on. You know, we're all
We're good now.
I'm trying to figure out where all are you guys broadcasting to?
Facebook, X, Rumble, and YouTube.
Jesus, and it's going to my Rumble channel. Yeah, that if there's any issues, I would just jump to a different platform and try to watch it somewhere else because it may just be whatever platform you're watching on. I don't know, but
Go to Ethan's channel.
yeah, I don't even see anyone in the chat on my channel. Yeah, I announced it late, so I mean, there's people watching, but maybe if somebody in the chat on Lightmore TV on Ethan Lucas Show can put something in the chat just so you can tell us what you're hearing and seeing. That way we know, because I don't want, I mean, yeah, we need to get over this real quick and get moving, but I also don't want to go through a whole show and find out later that the sound for some reason was off somewhere. Especially especially if it's off in the recording. We don't want that.
It's a lot of mixed reviews here. We've got Rumble is A-OK from Stevie Bananas. Maggie D8 says Scott's very low. Earlier it was Ethan and Scott that were low. Joe's super loud. Nobody's had any problems hearing Joe.
Yeah, it's your lapel mic. If I were you, Scott, I would literally just use it like a regular microphone.
No, we switched.
Turn 'em off.
Yeah, we switched to the other to the Mac on the laptop or the Mac. How about that?
Well, the only issue I hear with that now is I'm hearing the river in the background. I feel like it was better with the lapel mics if you're actually holding them up to your mouth like a real microphone.
Well, we could switch because you're loud. We'll just switch, but we'll have to put this back in. I don't know if it'll need to reconnect though. We'll switch one more time.
No, I'm just turning these off. You and I should sound the same here.
Yeah, but he's saying the river's really loud.
Carol said it's good on Ethan's Rumble. Okay, so whoever is having issues hearing this, you might want to get on a different computer, a different device or something. Maybe put some earbuds in. Maybe try a different platform. Don't know, because I really don't. Literally, I'm a professional engineer in Nashville. This whole thing is a professional studio setup. I'm watching the sound levels. Everything looks good.
It's not Ethan.
Everything looks good, other than the fact that Scott's level was a little low, but I think it's your lapel mic.
Okay, it's better now. Okay, all right.
Everybody says getting better. Okay,
all right.
Yeah, so I don't know what it is. It's definitely not on my end. I can tell you that. I'm just, the reason I keep asking questions is because I'm just, as an engineer, what I'm trying to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. So, are you guys ready to roll? Then you want to go through it?
Yeah, let's roll. Let's roll.
Yeah.
Well, where do you want to start exactly? Let me throw this out there, and then because Scott, it actually, credit to you. It was your idea to do this, which is funny because I already had this thumbnail made because I was going to start this series quite some time ago on my show, and I just haven't started it yet because number one, I've got probably 3 different series going on right now that are overlapping. And I just wasn't ready to get to it. But as soon as you and I had that conversation and you brought up some of the things that you did and we were talking, I'm like, yeah, this is perfect. Let's go ahead and do this, because normally we would be doing Throwaway Do Not Eat tonight. And we missed last week because of your travels. I was traveling as well. But we're going to go ahead and do this one tonight, Satan and Lucifer, What the Devil is the Difference. And it's going to rattle a lot of cages, I think. And hopefully bust you out of those cages, because the things that they have lied about with this particular subject matter is honestly where the overwhelming majority of religious bondage starts, I think. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the figures, those two figures, Lucifer and Satan, they actually originate from different linguistic, mythological, and esoteric traditions. And, people obviously think that they're the same, one and the same. That's what's been taught to us. They've been conflated in popular discourse, and they actually represent two completely distinct archetypes. And this isn't even lost in the Bible either. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you pick up the Bible and you read through this thing. Lucifer and Satan are two different things. By the way, technically, the word Satan never actually appears in the Bible. That's an English adaptation to the Hebrew word Satanas, which simply means opposer. It's not an individual entity. It could be anyone. Remember when Jesus said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan"? He said, "Get behind me, Satana," which means "Get behind me, opposer." It's a spirit. It's an archetype. And then Lucifer. The word Lucifer literally means light bringer, and it symbolizes inner illumination and spiritual liberation. And Satan as the adversarial opposer, who embodies limitation, law, and the passage of time, and all the things associated with Saturn, which is what Satan is, right? And so what I kind of want to go through in this, and even if we don't get all the way through it today on this, we could pick up on it on a part two. And this really doesn't have to be a long series. And I'll tell you this too, guys, if you haven't heard of this book, The Origin of Satan by Elaine Pagels or Pagels. I don't know how she says her name, but if you haven't heard of that book, pick up that book, The Origin of Satan. It will dispel a lot of myths right out of the gate that I'm not, things that obviously through a whole entire book, we're not going to, spend that amount of time on this because that would probably be a, 20-part series or whatever. But pick up that book, The Origin of Satan by Elaine Pagels or Pagels. I don't know how you pronounce it, but here's what I do want to cover in this. And Scott, Joe, I'll let you guys, ask whatever questions, put whatever input you want in on it. And I know, Scott, you're like, well, Ethan's, or Joe, whoever said it earlier, like Ethan's the one's going to be doing all the talking on this. Not really. I mean, I don't want to be because it would, I mean, not that it's a bad thing, but that would literally be like, you two are the only two sitting in the class and I'm the teacher. So if people are just watching it live, right?
Right.
So yeah, anytime you have input, obviously, put it in there. But I do want to break it down like this in a kind of an orderly fashion if we can, so we don't miss anything. And we'll start with biblical origins of each name and their role. Lucifer as the morning star, and actually his name is Phosphorus, right? Okay. And we're going to talk about that in terms of phosphorus in the body and the DNA. Lucifer is literally within you, right? Remember, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not outside of you. You can't look to it, point to it, say it's over here or over there. It doesn't come with physical observation. It's within you. All of the stuff in the Bible is within you. Lucifer, Satan, God, all of this stuff. It's all within you. It's as above, so below. People are like, well, does it happen outside of you or do they exist outside? In a sense, if you want to talk it's all relative. If you want to talk in terms of the stuff you see around you as being outside of you, sure. But technically nothing is outside of you. There is no outside. It's all happening in your mind, right? You're literally just, it's a dream. Where does a dream happen? When you're in a dream, it seems just like this, right? No different than this at all. Where is it happening? Can you point to it? Can you drive? Can you pull it up on Google Maps? Can you go to it? No. It's all happening in your mind. Same thing with this reality. It's all happening in our mind. So I want to talk about that. And then let's talk a little bit too about Satan as the opposer that's linked to Saturn, the god of time, god of law, god of disillusion, god of restriction. And then let's talk about mythological analogies in Norse and Roman pantheons, because that's kind of how we got here, honestly, with these two concepts. And then also esoteric interpretations in Hermetics, Rosicrucianism, and, what people call New Age. It's all kind of, woven in and out of that stuff a little bit too. But starting with that, I just want to say this. Ultimately, Lucifer, the name Lucifer, which comes from phosphorus, it literally means light bringer or light bearer or the carrier of light, represents the individual intellect, not just with that, but with all that stuff I just listed. Lucifer represents the individual intellect and that which rebels against the domination of nature and attempts to maintain itself contrary to natural impulse. And Lucifer has always been tied to the planet Venus, which is the morning star spoken of in the book of Revelation, which is given, the Bible says, to those who overcome the world. So it's a really interesting concept. It's something that clearly they didn't want us to really know about. They didn't want us to really dive into too deep and understand, because anyone who understands all of that stuff is too dangerous for the system. They can't be controlled, right?
Right. Exactly. Well, and there's the whole duality, but there's duality in everything, right? So you've got Lucifer incarnate. You know, he fell around the 15th century, was incarnated, kind of like the Christ figure, same kind of a thing. But there's the Luciferian impulse, and he was God's favorite, right? So, but
Well, technically, Lucifer, like you and I talked about, Lucifer and Christ are one and the same. But there is the fallen Lucifer, and there is the original and whole Lucifer, or in Christ resurrected, the risen Lucifer, the redeemed Lucifer. And if we're, and we'll get to that in a minute, but the concept of the twins, you and I talked about that on the phone, but was it yesterday we talked about? I think it was yesterday.
yeah,
If you go through the whole Bible, everything pertaining to the Christ archetype and the promised child archetype, there's always twins every time. Look at Abraham with his wife Sarah, who couldn't have a child, and so he went to his handmaid. Now they're not technically twins in this sense, but the concept is there. It's still the same metaphysical symbolism. So he had a son, Ishmael, who is said to be the father of the Muslims or the Arabics, and he had that child with his wife's handmaiden, Hagar. And later on, Isaac was born to him, the promised child, through Sarah. Isaac later gave birth to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. Jacob was a twin of Esau. And also, just like his father, or his mother Sarah, his wife Rebecca, Isaac's the promised child, his wife Rebecca was barren for 40 years. And it's always the number 40, by the way, in the Bible. That's there for a reason. It's not just like happenstance or big giant coincidence that everything happens with the number 40. You know, the Noah's flood, 40 days and 40 nights. Moses on the mountain top for 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus tempted in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights on the mountaintop. The Israelites wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Rebecca, Isaac's wife, barren for 40 years. And then suddenly gives birth to Jacob and Esau, the twins. And Esau gave birth to the Edomites, which later became what we know as the Ashkenazi Jews, the Rothschilds, reptilian-minded people. So when we talk about reptilians, could it manifest itself as a literal, actual reptile? Well, sure. Everything has its form in the field, right? The biomorphic field, but it's really just an archetype. And there's a part in our brain called the reptilian brain. It's the lower part of the brain. It's what rules over survival, reproduction, feeding. It's all fear-based, right? And so when we talk about reptilians running everything, we're quite literally talking about people that have that mindset, that operate from the reptilian brain. It's simple anatomy. It's science. Doesn't even have to be anything woo woo. Quite frankly, I know there's a lot of different life forms in the universe everywhere, and quite frankly, I don't care if they're literally walking giant lizards or not. What we need to be concerned, you know what? But you see my point. Like what we need to be concerned with is how we handle ourselves and what do these archetypes really mean? How do they affect us, right? Because it's all in the biomorphic field anyway. And
It
so,
has a lot to do with our
what's that?
energy structure. When we're centered in our energy structure, we're, that's the Christ energy. If we're down
Yes,
in our lower chakras, we're dealing with that reptilian thing you were talking about, or that Luciferian impulse. So
right,
our behaviors are service to self rather than service to others. If we
right.
get too high up in our, if we maintain our existence in the higher chakras and ignore the grounded lower chakras, then all kinds of things go screwy and we lose our minds. So it's that balance I think that this refers to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And by the way, and we'll get to that point in a minute. And I actually have some bullet pointed notes, and because I want to kind of keep this structured, and it's a little further down in my notes, but we're going to talk about why it is a misnomer to refer to any devil figure as Lucifer. We should actually be referring to a devil figure in that sense as the fallen Lucifer, actually as his twin. The twin uh, archetypal metaphysical symbolism and story goes all the way through the Bible. So you have Jacob and Esau, which Jacob later became Israel. And of course, we know the real Israel was a spiritual family, a spiritual kingdom. It's not a physical racist bloodline, right? Now, I do believe that those um, who resurrect into the family, because you're being adopted into it, you're being born again, and being born again is a spiritual resurrection, and those who are resurrected to that higher vibration, that is going to affect the morphic field around us, and I believe it does change our genetics, right? And you hear a lot and I've talked with Honey C. Golden about this recently on one of shows we just did yesterday, actually, um, that light and matter are actually one and the same. Matter is actually just slowed down or trapped light. And so the light, which is Lucifer, the light bringer, the light bearer, right, gets trapped. That's how Lucifer has fallen. But he has a twin because Lucifer is a reference to Venus, and Venus as the bright morning star, which Jesus refers to himself as in Revelation. Jesus literally calls himself Lucifer in the book of Revelation. He said, I am the bright and morning star, which is a reference to Venus, Lucifer, right? There is a twin. Now, Jesus had a twin. This was hidden by the Vatican. It's stated kind of softly throughout the Bible. Thomas Didymus, both names, Thomas and Didymus, mean the twin. So Jesus had a twin. And by the way, I can't remember what it's called, but there is a scientific and medical term for it where a mother can actually get pregnant while she's still pregnant, or while she is pregnant. She can get pregnant again, and it can actually be from the seed of another man, right? And I believe this is what happened in the case of Jesus. Jesus, I believe, was a divine conception created by the morphic field, created by God, right? Mary became the willing vessel to do that, and she literally manifested it, right? But she's married. Remember, read the story in the Bible. She's married. You think, and Joseph stayed with her when he found out, hey, she's pregnant, but, she wasn't, skipping around in all the neighbors' beds. This isn't some other dude's kid. This is literally something by divine conception. And an angel came to Joseph in the dream and told him that. And so he decided to stay with her. Now think about that. She's already pregnant. She's probably some hot little young thing, because that's how all those Jewish guys rolled around back then, and they still do, right? You mean to tell me he's traveling around all over the place with her, staying in hotels and stuff, and they're not getting jiggy with it? She's already pregnant, right? She's bulletproof, right? It's like, well, what does it matter? We're getting married. You're already pregnant. This whole thing seems to be a weird fuckaroo anyway. So we're getting it on. So I guarantee
Yeah,
you,
he at least wants to have some fun.
right. So I guarantee you, Joseph and Mary were getting it on after she was pregnant with Jesus. So then she was impregnated again. And so here we have the twin archetype again. And it has to be because Jacob, Israel, was an archetype of the Christ to come, right? So, and this was actually hidden. The last book in or the last chapter in the book of James. In fact, there's still a really, really old Bible. I can't remember what year it's from. It's one of the oldest ones we have, copies of the Bible. I believe it's in a museum over in the UK somewhere that they actually remove. You can see those scriptures are there, but they're not in these Bibles we have today. They've removed it. But in this really old ass Bible, it's there. The last chapter of James, it literally says that Jesus had a twin. And so they would remove that for obvious reasons, right? Because they can't continue their lie and spin everything in the control over people if I lost Joe and Scott. I'm going to keep going. Hopefully they can come back in. I'll just kind of keep talking about that. Well, it's kind of wonky on the screen because it's laid out for them to be on here. I'll just leave it like that. There we go. All right, you back with us?
We're back.
Okay, cool. If you plug it into something besides a tree, it would probably work better. I know you guys are really good at generating electricity with trees and shit, but I'm just teasing you. So, they removed literally the Vatican had that last scripture in the last the chapter of the book of James. James was a brother of Jesus, right? Jesus had many siblings actually, and that's in just the regular ass Bible that you can pick up today. And Catholics will still deny it today, even though it bluntly and blatantly says, that Jesus had other siblings, which of course came after Jesus and his twin that they removed from the Bible. But it's still there. You can kind of see it. And if you understand that archetype has to follow, then of course that makes perfect sense that it would happen. But they act like, well, that would be an abomination. Well, that's only in your mind. You made that up in your religious, weak, carnal, fallen mind because you don't really understand who and what Lucifer really is, who and what Satan really is, who and what God really is. You don't even understand who and what you really are because you've let them control your mind and dumb you down and keep you in a position of servitude and a slave-like mentality. That's why you get offended if you do about things like that. But the enlightened mind understands, well, of course, it has to happen that way because you understand the ontological mathematical patterns of the universe. You understand how God actually works. You understand how the stories are going to play out and how it's all going to repeat. The patterns are going to repeat. So if Jacob, who later was renamed by God as Israel, had a twin brother who was fallen, then of course Jesus would also have a twin brother who was fallen, right? And he's not Lucifer. Jesus is Lucifer. They've corrupted the name. They did it on purpose. They flipped it. Now, if you want to talk about it in terms as because we all have Lucifer within us, we all have Christ within us. There is a fallen nature because it represents Venus. Venus has two manifestations. One's called the bright morning star and one's called the evening star. They're both Venus. But one is the bringer of the dawn. The other is the bringer of the darkness. And that is Hespius. So if anybody would be the devil as a fallen Lucifer or a fallen Venus, it would be Hespius, not Lucifer. Lucifer is the light bringer. Hespius is the darkness bringer.
I got a question for you with the obvious what people call Luciferian themes within the Vatican, which I think may be more satanic than or fallen Lucifer or Luciferian impulse themes, but they're definitely there. Obviously in the architecture, everybody knows about the snake building and that ridiculous statue, and I mean there's a million examples. We could do a whole separate show on it, but
yeah.
Do you think that there was a turning point with the Vatican and Catholicism where they is there a twin Vatican, so to speak, in that regard, as far as the impulse?
Well, the Vatican is the dark twin of the real ecclesia.
Okay.
And I say ecclesia for a reason because there is no church was started by the dark forces. Church is satanic. The ecclesia was started by the light. Jesus started an ecclesia. He did not start a church. You go through the entire Bible. The word church does not appear one time in this Bible in the original Hebrew and Greek. When you read the word church in English in these English translations, it is a false translation. They literally took the word ecclesia and made it say church. The word ecclesia does not mean church. It never did. Ask any historian, especially Greek historians, they'll tell you an ecclesia is a civil body. It is a political body. It's a political movement. It is a lawful assembly of sovereigns. This is why they hated Jesus. This is why they hated his disciples. Because they were waking up to the fact that God is within you. They were resurrecting the true Lucifer, the true Christ, the true light bringer within them, instead of going along with the fallen version of Hespius, the fallen Venus. And of course, Venus is all about the physical, the flesh, right? Venus is related to Taurus in the astrological symbolism, which is the bull or Baal, right? It's all about carnality. It's all about physical beauty and the lust. That's the lower side of it. Every sign and everything in this world, it has a polarity. Everything has a positive and a negative, a light side and a dark side. So that's what I'm saying. The confusion that they created was just a very slight switch, not only with the word ecclesia to church, but also with Lucifer demonizing that name when it doesn't even make sense. How can you take a word that literally means light bringer and say that the one who is the light bringer, the light of the world, the bright and morning star, which is what Jesus refers to himself as, literally says, I am the bright and morning star. I am Lucifer. And then turn that into a devil figure. I don't think it takes a rocket surgeon to figure out why they'd want to do that. What do you think?
Well, is this when they decided, because there's the right-hand path and the left-hand path as a path to God. And the left-hand path was one of debauchery and sin and, whatever else, the worst things we could think of.
That's the concept of sin for salvation.
Right. The idea that they felt that was a quicker way to get to God because by nature humans were fallen creatures.
Right. Well, when here's the thing. You really, it's the most important thing you can ever do in figuring out yourself and how to actually see the world and live in it properly and experience this realm properly. You have to understand you are not this body. Stop identifying with this body. Just the way you get in your car and drive it, you like your car, you want to take care of it, you want it to be nice, you want the nicest car you can have, right? But literally, that's what your body is. It's a vehicle. It's not you. You are the driver inside the car. You are a spirit. You have a soul, which is a collection of your mind, will, and emotions, and you live in a body, a vehicle that is not you. The fallen Lucifer. So anytime you've heard me say, and I do this obviously out of convenience because the programming is so deep. If I walk around talking about how Lucifer is actually good, especially in the truther crowd and the patriot circles, I'm going to be called everything not good. I'm going to be called, a Freemason, or he must be Illuminati. He must be all the thing. And all these words, they don't even know what those mean anyway. Like Illuminati.
Heretic.
The original Illuminati actually despised the Vatican. It was a secret society started by Pythagoras. It was an esoteric, mystical school of mathematically minded people, gifted geniuses who were enlightened and understood the dangers of religion and the churches, right? They understood all these concepts. And I think what ended up happening is it was attacked and demonized so much by the Vatican and the powers that be on the dark side. The Hespians is really what they should be called, not the Luciferians, because Hespius is the evening star, the fallen Venus, the fallen Lucifer. They shouldn't be called Luciferians. But I have done that throughout the years because you can't just walk in and bust open a can of, hey, Lucifer, here you go. Because understand, especially me as somebody who teaches the Bible and the Christian crowd that I'm reaching, it's not an easy pill for them to swallow because people get so attached to words, which is it fucking blows my mind. Like, bro, it's literally just a word. We could call it hooply guy. We could call it didgeridoo, whatever the fuck you want to. It's literally just words that everybody's made up. And then you go along with it, right? Stop getting attached to words. Stop getting attached to the body. Stop getting attached to the physical world. So circling back to that concept you're talking about of sin for salvation, there's something to that. The concept is that if it's kind of like, and I'm sure you heard of this, and it was more common like back in the, the silent generation or the greatest generation as they call them, or even the boomer generation, where a kid, like 10-year-old kid, gets caught smoking cigarettes by his dad, and the dad literally makes him smoke the whole pack of cigarettes, one right after another, chain smoke it really fast until he gets sick and pukes so that he never wants another cigarette again, right? That's the concept of sin for salvation. The problem is some of these sick fucks have taken it way too far. Instead of, going and doing things consensually with other people that would normally be considered something hedonistic, carnal, right? They go out and they take it to the absolute limit, raping children, trafficking people, killing, sacrificing, ritualistic blood sorcery sacrifice of men, women, and children. And so you can even take that concept of sin for salvation to, the worst level, to where it's not really taking you to a place of salvation. Now it's just, you're just falling off into the abyss.
Well, isn't it? This has a lot to do with power structure. It seems that all of the most important information for humanity had to be kept secret by, these mystery schools that really
Yeah.
wanted to provide the information, but the retribution against it was so fierce that they had to do it in secret. I mean, even Jesus himself, or the Christians that followed, when they used the symbol of the fish, because they wanted to be able to identify one another, but there were serious consequences for what was seen at the time as heretical.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
very much still that way today. It seems
Yeah.
like somehow.
Well, they were
that's
using the symbol of the fish because it was the age of Pisces. Jesus was born at the
Right,
beginning of the
right.
age of Pisces, right? And Jesus said in the scripture, when you see the man carrying the pitcher of water, follow him into the upper room. There you will find a table fully furnished, and I will commune with you. Now, everyone who reads the Bible like a cheap ass newspaper, the people who don't understand references, like when someone like me says, well, that's a Luciferian practice, I'm placating the dumbed down and programmed minds that think that Lucifer is actually bad, right? I'm talking about the fallen Luciferians. The Hespians is what they really are, right? Those who follow the evening star, not the bright and morning star. Same entity, same planet, Venus, same archetype, two sides, twins, right? But
Or just for clarification, could you also say satanic, the Saturn worshippers?
no, because Satan is different than Lucifer. When you break this down, understand they're talking. The symbolism comes from the energetic imprint and projection from those two planets, Saturn and from Venus. Venus is literally Lucifer. Saturn is literally Satan. And those planets are energetic, mathematical, ontological points of energetic projection from those archetypes. That's why they're called the archons. All the 7 major planets are the original 7 archons that each one rule over one of the 7 chakras, right?
Right.
So Venus is the interesting one because it has aspects throughout the whole body, but it's really the heart chakra, right? And the heart and it's the center one because you got 3 above it and 3 below it. Everything, that's the hub, the crux. That is the center of the Garden of Eden, is in the heart. And there are 2 trees. There's your twin concept. It's from the Bible from the beginning all the way to the end. The tree of life is Lucifer, the risen Christ. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is death. It is church and state, the obsession with what's good and what's evil, and forcing those ideas and rules on yourself and other people to create psychosis in society, to create warmongering and the perversion of sexuality and all different sorts of things, so that it creates all those monstrosities. That's the fallen Lucifer. That's the Hespius or Lilith, if you want to look at it in that tradition. You know, remember Adam left his wife Eve, and or some people say that he had. It depends on what traditions you look at. And this is the problem with all this stuff in telephone game over thousands of years. Lilith, either way, was another wife of Adam. Adam fell. Adam was also Lucifer, the first Adam, and he fell. He became the fallen Lucifer. That's why Jesus is called the second Adam, and he has to suffer what the first Adam caused, but he fulfills the law. So he balances the mathematical equation. There's no breaking of the law. It's fulfilling of the law. It's balancing the equation. So then he resurrects as the Christ. It's the risen Lucifer, the risen Christ again. But we got to get that demonization of the word Lucifer out of our brains, because they programmed us with this. Lucifer means light bringer. Jesus literally calls himself Lucifer, and he should. That's not the problem. And Christ is within us all. There is a risen Christ in us if we tap into it. That's what the alchemical great work is about, right? Doing the great work within. Transmuting base lead, which is symbolized by Saturn or Satan, into gold, which symbolizes the sun, Leo, lion, the lion of Judah, Christ, the risen Christ, right? Does that make sense?
Ethan, I was just going to say they've inverted everything else, so why wouldn't they invert this?
Correct.
And then even with Hitler, we did a show with Mike King for a few hours, and someone reposted it the other day because they loved how in depth Mike King went into that subject matter. But I mean, for anyone that might be struggling with this, just like they've inverted Hollywood, they've inverted so many other things. That helps me right now make sense of this, because it's hard to wrap your head around when you're not used to hearing anything. Right. I've heard that Jesus had a twin, but now I'm not surprised at all.
Well, and then there's this pattern that occurs with Egyptian mythology and everything else. There's the death and resurrection, born of a virgin. All of these components are in all of these stories, but
Yes.
they all mimic our own physiology. And I think you've seen examples of where you bisect the brain, and you can see the story in our physiology there as well.
Yeah.
But
by the way, somebody put it in the chat on my channel, reminded me that the name of what that's called when a woman gets pregnant after she's already pregnant, it's called superfetation. And I am fully convinced at this point this is exactly what happened with Jesus and his twin. Jesus was the divine conception that happened through a lot of the things that Dr. Greg Braden and Dr. Bruce Lipton talk about with epigenetics, and Rupert Sheldrake talks about with the biomorphic field and epigenetics with that. It's simply, and we have the power to do that. You can literally heal the body and change the body in ways that would completely astonish the rest of the world who doesn't understand these things, right? And so Mary willingly took that on. Remember, the angel approached her first, and you're seeing a very abbreviated version of that conversation between the angel and Mary. Like, hey, you're going to bear, the Messiah. You're going to give birth. But she had to consent. She had to accept it and be willing, be the vessel, and she did. So this is something that happened within her, because all interactions with angels anyway happen within you. Everything's happening within you. This conversation, this podcast, anyone watching this, all this is happening in your mind right now. It's not happening anywhere else but in your mind. Take away the mind and what exists? Nothing.
And it's not local. Science has kind of proven that.
Right. This is why they run into all
right.
kinds of problems now that they've gone down to the quantum level. They're like, well, wait a minute. Newtonian physics it only works on a larger scale in a very small subset of circumstances. That's not reality. Physical matter is not physical at all. It literally is light that has been either trapped or slowed down, and it has been contained as a standing wave within a field, and we control our field. Most of us actually don't. You have the ability, I should say it that way. You have the ability to control your field. You have to develop it. And the Christ principle within you, or that Lucifer principle within you, which is actually in the phosphorus in your DNA. Again, the word Lucifer is a word taken from the Greek word phosphorus, pho for light, and pharos, I believe, which means to carry. And so phosphorus is lit, and that's why they named that chemical phosphorus, because it literally does. I mean, you should, if you haven't, have you studied phosphorus and the DNA and all that stuff?
Not in the DNA, no.
Well, I know you've studied ATP and things like that. Phosphorus plays a really big role in all of that. So that's why I thought maybe, you might have studied that. But let's do this. Biblical origins. Let's break that down a little bit, because we haven't really spent a lot of time yet talking about Satan. Let's bring Satan into the picture.
Agreed.
In the Hebrew, this is where it all starts. You go back to the Old Testament. I don't care if you're talking about, this Bible or any other. I'm just talking about even if you're only looking at the first 5 books of the Bible, which is the Torah for religious Jews, and I believe they call it the Tanakh, is their Old Testament. There's all variations of it, but even if you just look at the entire Old Testament as we have it, whether you're looking at the ones in the Protestant Bible with the 66 books, or the ones in the Catholic Bible with, I think it's 72, or even the Ethiopian, but it doesn't matter. I'm talking about all stuff pre-Jesus, right? All the stuff before Jesus and written in Hebrew, the stuff from the Hebrew traditions. In Hebrew, the word Satan or Shaitan, it is a noun, a descriptive noun, and it literally means accuser or opposer or adversary. And it's used both for human opponents, like Jesus did with Peter, when Peter was opposing Jesus' mission unwittingly, right? And later as a supernatural prosecutor in the divine court. This happens in the book of Job, Job chapter 1 and 2. And in Zechariah chapter 3, actually, I want to pull those up real quick, because this is an important place to look at. Let's just go to the book of Job, start in chapter 1. I got to blow this up real big. Give me a minute. It's big so you can see it. This is what's interesting. It starts out talking about Job. There was a man in the land of Uz. Now, Uz etymologically is the same as the city of U-Z-U-R, right? And Abraham, who gave birth to the promised child, or was the father of the promised child, Isaac, who later was the father of the Christ archetypal figure, or the Lucifer archetypal figure, Israel, Jacob, right? Abraham, he came from the city of Ur. Job came from the city of Uz. The word Uz or Ur literally means origin point. And by the way, this is the book of Job. It's the oldest book in the Bible. It's kind of stuck in the middle of the Old Testament, but it's the oldest book in the Bible. Some biblical historians have it dated somewhere around 6,000 years old. So there's an interesting point that's being made here with Job being called, or it's being said of him that he is a man in the land of Uz. He is in the land of origins. Very deep spiritual symbolism here with this. That's very important to note. That's not said by accident. In fact, I'm going to look at my phone real quick in the book of Job, because I know I have some notes in here about this. Okay, yeah, this is interesting. So, let's see. He was perfect and upright, and one that feared God. Now, this is King James. That's Old English. That word, people, when they spoke Old Victorian English or Shakespearean English, they use the word fear differently than we do now. It didn't mean to be afraid of or scared of, right? It meant respect. So this literally says he was one that had respect, deep reverence and respect for God, and he didn't like evil. That's basically what it says. Look at verse 2. Here's where we can see the symbolism besides Uz, which means origin. This is where you see the symbolism really kicking in. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? How many times you see the number 7 and the number 3 throughout the Bible? And ask yourself, why do the Freemasons think that the number 3 and the number 7 are the two most important numbers? There's a reason for that. And here's what this symbolizes. The 7 sons are the 7 chakras, and the 3 daughters are the soul, because the soul is triune. It's mind, will, and emotion. Remember, you have a spirit. That's your eternal consciousness that exists outside of space and time, that's tethered here to this body, had to have this experience. You are a spirit. You have a soul, which is a collection of your mind, will, and emotions. That's the 3 daughters. The 7 chakras are your 7 sons in the spine. And you live in a body. Okay. Now, let's go on down to verse 6. You can see the symbolism continues. 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels. See, there's the number 7 and 3 again. 500 yoke of oxen. What's oxen? It is a cow-like or a bull-like creature, right? With the horns. It's bull, Baal, the toroidal field, Taurus. And 5, it's telling you that this is about the physical, the carnal, the 5 human senses: taste, touch, sight, smelling, and hearing. Same as the 5 stones that David, as a child, pulled out of the Jordan River, popped Goliath right between the eyes, the pineal gland, to kill him. Goliath represents the ego. Here we're going to see the whole thing play out as Satan, the Satan, the opposer, enters the courts of heaven in the divine council. And so it's laying this out to show you all the symbolism here. Talking about a man and the origin points, land of Uz, right? It's the land of Oz. Do you see the similarity? Do you see where they get that from now? All the symbolism is there, right? Okay. And the 7 sons, which are the 7 chakras, the 3 daughters, which is your soul, mind, will, and emotions. And it says his substance, or what he owned, 7,000 sheep. Sheep are thoughts of the mind, thoughts in the body, the emotional body, the 7 chakras. The 3,000 camels. Camels carry water and help with survival. That's your soul. 3 is the soul, 7 is the chakras, right? And the 500 yoke of oxen, that's the physical, the lower carnal mind, the 5 human senses. And it's indicating in that it gives you the number in numerology plus the animal that symbolizes what it's telling you. It's very obvious once you know the symbols, once you have the keys to the symbols, it's very easy to read. And see also 500 she-asses, that's donkeys. And
Wow.
it's 500 asses. It's like the Democrat Party. But seriously, it's, donkeys are stubborn.
They, them asses, though.
Right. They, them asses. Donkeys are stubborn, right? It's it's the 5 human senses, the carnal mind. It's stubborn. It's a lower animal nature. And it can't reproduce.
Oh, right.
See, the Bible was way more clever than people know, because they're sitting around in churches, and the abominable churches an abomination to God, reading this highly symbolic and multi-layered genius, cosmically genius book, like a cheap-ass newspaper, defiling it. There's no greater book in existence, and there never will be. All right. And he had a very great household. This man was the greatest of all. He was the greatest of all the men of the East in America, the greatest. There isn't a greater man. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and drink with him. So this is the communing of the soul with the 7 chakras, right? And verse 5, and so it was when the days of their feasting were gone about that Job sent and sanctified them, rose up early in the morning. And here we go with the fucking ritualistic, religious, blood sorcery sacrifices, right? And so here's what he did. He offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. 7 chakras. The 3 daughters, which is your soul. So this is him getting into a religious mindset, performing religious acts like ritualistic blood sorcery sacrifice, thinking, why? What did he say? Job said, it may be, he's acting in fear here. I don't know, but I'm afraid that maybe my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. So Job continually did this religious act thinking that's going to fix it. So it's showing you what's happening, the slow slide down a religious carnal mindset. And it says, now there was a day when this is where it gets really interesting. You're reading an English translation that's not accurate. Where it says here, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Notice it's in all caps, right? The only word in all caps, the Lord, and Satan came also among them. If you go back to the original Hebrew, this actually says the sons of the Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh. Elohim is plural for gods.
Right.
Now, the Elohim are actually the archons, the planets. Mercury, Venus, the sun, the moon, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune.
We develop pantheons. Yeah.
These are the archons. And also, you'll find later in the book of Job, it talks about the influences of the planets and the stars. It says, who can bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades? Who can bring forth Mazzaroth in her time? Mazzaroth is the Hebrew word for zodiac. The book of Job is an entirely astrological treatise. In fact, most of the Bible is, because the astrological symbolism shows us the archetypes of this world and how they work. Your job, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to overcome the world like Jesus said. He who overcomes, I will give the crown of life. Well, where's your crown? Crown chakra on top of your head, right? Now, who wears the crown now? Saturn, Satan, the king of the archons. That's Yahweh. This says the sons of God, the Elohim came to present themselves before Yahweh. And Satan came also among them. That word Satan, notice how they capitalized it in English, making it look like it's a proper noun, like it's somebody's name. Right. It's not. It's the Hebrew word shaitan, which literally means opposer. It says, and the opposer came also among them. See, this is how the whole deception started with this shit right here. Satan is not a person. It's an archetypal energy. It's the opposer, the accuser, the adversary. So there was so what it's saying, you read it in context. The Bible says, rightly divide the word of truth. Otherwise, you're going to come up with all kinds of wonky bullshit religious stuff. It's literally telling you that there was a divine council here. And among the sons of the Elohim, the sons of the gods who came before Yahweh, an opposer also came among them. So one of these, of the sons of the Elohim, was opposing Job. And he entered into this divine council, which is what it's talking about. And it says, the Lord, that's Yahweh, said unto the opposer, you got to stop thinking of Satan as a person. He's not a person. It could be any of us, just like Peter was called Satan by Jesus. It's an energy. Even Saturn, which is Yahweh, is not Satan in the strict sense of the way we think of the word Satan. Because again, the word Satan simply means opposer or adversary. Saturn is the opposer. He's the God of law and time and disillusion and boundaries, restrictions, right? He's the opposer. So it's very deceptive the way they've translated it falsely into English, because it creates a whole different story than what it actually says in the original Hebrew.
Oh, entirely.
This does not say the way they translated it here is completely false. It doesn't say what they say it says.
And that was just for political benefit more than anything, or power
control.
And control?
Power and control. Because you can't control somebody who has a free mind. You can't control a sovereign spirit, right?
Right, exactly.
And so here's what it really says in verse 7. And Yahweh said unto the opposer, whoever that was, one of the sons of the Elohim, whoever was doing the opposing. Yahweh said unto that opposer, whence comest thou? Think of this. If this is really the devil, Satan. He's literally hanging out in the courts of heaven with God. Bullshit. That doesn't jive in any sense of the words at all. Like that is complete self-contradiction, right? This is not the devil in heaven. This is an opposer, because the word shaitan does not, it's not a name. It's not an individual. It could be anyone. Just like Peter became the Satan or the Satan. And Jesus called him that. Get behind me, opposer. Right? Does that make sense? And so
It totally makes making
so
me think
Yahweh
about
asked this cat, whoever he was, one of the sons of the Elohim, he asked him, he said, where are you coming from? And then the opposer answered Yahweh and said, from going to and fro in the earth and from walking up and down in it. And he gets into this conversation with Yahweh about Job, if you read through it. And he's like, Yahweh's sitting here. And this is how you can tell that Yahweh is not even the real God. This is Saturn. All day long, this is Saturn. This is the guy with the big white beard, the white robe, on the white throne, the white clouds, right? It's Saturn. Saturn, Father Time, always has. He symbolized as Odin, too. The father of Thor, who is the Jesus Christ figure, who has the twin brother, Loki, who is the fallen Lucifer figure, right? Odin also has the big white beard, right? That's why God's always shown the Rockefeller, not Rockefeller, the hell's the name? Norman Rockwell, who his paintings. He always made God, the white dude with the white beard, all that stuff, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Okay, so you look at this, and Yahweh. So anytime you see Lord here in all caps, that's Yahweh. That should be your clue too. Saturn. Remember the all caps name thing, straw man, all that shit.
Right.
Okay? He's being called Lord in all caps. That's a legal fiction. But it's really Yahweh. Why don't they put Yahweh there? I want to know. How come y'all ain't putting Yahweh there? Is it maybe because you don't want to know people to figure out what's really going on here? You know what I mean? A lot of deception.
It was forbidden to use the true name of God. There was that whole thing throughout the Old Testament.
The Hebrews had no problem writing it in original Hebrew. It's it's the religious minded fools, the religious Jews who get a hold of this stuff, and then they take it and put it in English. It's not even God's name anyway. God's name is not Yahweh. The tetragrammaton, I always fuck that up when I'm trying to say, I can't remember what it is, but it's the 4 letters, right? It symbolizes, there's a reason they call the 4 elements. L is God. It's a generic word for God. Yeah. It's used for Saturn actually a lot. And ment is Latin for mind. It's element literally means the mind of God. So the 4 elements, that's why there's 4 letters in Yahweh. But he is Saturn, the demiurge, the god of this world.
But Elohim would be a plurality?
Elohim means gods. It's literally a plural word that means gods.
And like way back in Genesis, that story was plural.
It was all Elohim. The name Yahweh didn't pop up until later. From the very beginning, it was nothing but Elohim. Gods, plural. And that's another story for another time as well. But so this says, Yahweh said unto the opposer, have you considered my servant Job? There's none like him. He's bragging about him. See, the real God doesn't do stuff like this. This is an earthly minded God. This is a carnally minded God, because the God of this world, as is stated in 2 Corinthians 4:4, the Apostle Paul refers to Saturn as the God of this world and calls him the opposer, calls him a devil, which we'll talk about definitions of that word too. It doesn't mean what they say that it means either.
What I love about this is you've identified the different motivations for adulterating the Bible, I really wonder what the books that we haven't had access to would add to your take on it, because the whole thing would obviously fall apart if we had access to that information.
Correct. They wouldn't have a game. And had they not translated things like this, instead of putting Yahweh, they put Lord in all caps. So the clue is still kind of there for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And had they not put Satan with a capital letter, making it look like that is his name and he's an individual person, when it literally comes from the Hebrew word Satan, which means opposer. It could be anybody. So this is just one of the sons of the Elohim. But you've got him bragging about Job. And then the opposer said, oh, yeah, well, guess what? Does Job respect God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge of protection about him and his whole house? And you've blessed everything that he did. So in other words, this one of the sons of the Elohim here is mocking Yahweh, saying, oh, well, yeah, it's because you have this hedge of protection about him and you've babied him. You've given him everything. Take your hedge of protection out from him, and I guarantee you he'll fuck around and find out. Is really what this story ends up saying. Seriously, you read through it. We don't have time to read it. It's too fucking long, right? And then it goes on in chapter 2 also, but we're not going to go there. But check this out too. Go ahead.
Well, so if there's devil worshippers or these, Satanists that are, Crowley, for example, who would it be that they are then praying to or idolizing, or would trying to clarify this for the viewers? Is there then one figure, or is it just a power or energy, or
Crowley was largely involved with the Egyptian pantheon. Didn't really give much credit to. I never really heard any mention of Satan other than he loved to agitate. It was sort of his marketing. But
who would be the premium demonic being if they were picking one? Because some might say Satan, some may say
Baal. I think is the most common
Baal?
brand,
Okay.
for sure. Okay. Yeah, but because like Anton LaVey, the Satanic Bible, I mean, the guy was a marketer, don't you think? I mean, pretty good marketer at that.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm trying to find something else here. What you're talking? I don't know why it's not pulling it up. Zechariah chapter 3. It's a real chapter and a real verse in the Bible. There we go. Jesus, man. Okay, and this is interesting too. And I'm going to go down to verse 9 also. Actually, let's just look at the whole chapter of. Just trying to pull there. It's pulling up now. Okay, so look also in Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1. It says, and he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of Yahweh. Remember, every time it says the Lord, it's Yahweh. Standing before the angel of Yahweh. By the way, just so you know, before I forget to mention it, go through the New Testament, the original Greek. There's not a single time where Jesus ever uses the name Yahweh except when he's talking about the Jews who worship Yahweh, and he refers to the God of the Jews as the devil. When Jesus says my Father, or when he says God, he uses the word theos, which is Greek for God. It's a very generic term. And Father, which is Abba. Never one time did Jesus ever refer to Yahweh as his Father, because he's not.
Right. So that was the God of the Jews.
Correct. And you could see the evolution and the morphing, that how the Jews create. Because remember when God first presented himself to Moses, why didn't he say my name's Yahweh? He didn't. He said, I am that I am. That was the real God. That was the real
synagogue
God.
of Satan. The synagogue of Satan really is just the synagogue of opposers.
Yeah.
Or of the opposer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what it means. That's not what the meaning that it's taken on now, because of the false meaning that's been ascribed to the word Satan as a character. It's not, never was, never will be. So again, this is why, and I'm clarifying this because people are like, well, wait a minute, Ethan, I've heard you say, talk about Satanism and Luciferianism and all that stuff. I am speaking in terms that people understand. But what I'm referring to is what they've twisted it into. There's a difference between Lucifer and the fallen Lucifer. And that's what we're addressing here. But look at this scripture here, Zechariah 3:1. And he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of Yahweh, and Satan, the opposer, standing at his right hand to resist him. Now, why would an angel of God let the devil just stand there right next to him and resist him? Doesn't God's angels, according to the traditional story and the fucked up definitions they made up that are all wrong, doesn't the angel of God have power and authority to cast Satan out and get rid of him? Why is he allowing this devil character to stand right next to him while he's creating problems for Joshua the high priest? See, when you actually read what the Bible says, their narrative falls apart really fast. It doesn't even make sense. You see what I'm saying?
Totally.
And then go down to verse 9. This is an interesting thing. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, that's the pineal gland, by the way, and Joshua is a symbol of the promised child within you. The stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes, 7 chakras.
Yeah.
And the stone, it's part of that is the pineal gland. And behold, man, is that number 70? Do you really think all these times you see number 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, you really think it just, well, it just fucking happened that way? There happened to be 7 rocks and 7 bitches and 7 this and 7 cows and 7 asses. It's like, bro, when are you going to get it? It's trying to tell you the same thing over and over in different ways, right? It doesn't mean what it says. It's called a parable for a reason. The scriptures say that Jesus only taught in parables. Well, Jesus is the Christ is the word of God. The Bible says that clearly. So if the word of God only teaches in parables, which is hidden symbolism, why do people pick up the word of God and expect to read it like a cheap ass newspaper and get the right answers?
That it's literal, yeah. Right.
It's wild. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Literally. I mean, it might be dumber than sticking your finger in a light socket.
You know,
Because at least that won't destroy your entire life.
It's amazing how the Bible has endured for as long as it has, as like the ultimate #1 bestseller. But it's probably the most misunderstood volume ever written.
Yeah. So anyway, that was kind of a rando thing I just wanted to show you in that chapter. But it's literally all over the Bible. Now, let's talk about that divine council that was happening in the book of Job, right? Where the sons of all the Elohim came before Yahweh in his court with an opposer. If you translate it the way traditional understanding is of this, you literally have the devil in heaven having a conversation with God, and God saying to the devil, yeah, go ahead and go fuck with Job because, you know, I like to gamble. Really? Really? And I like to gamble with other people's life, especially the dudes that are really doing stuff right. I really love to I'm God, and I really love to fuck with the most upright of all of my people. So, yeah, devil, just not only that, hey, you know, on your way out, you left some towels in the bathroom. Make sure you clean that up. And you're more than welcome to come back when you want, because this is heaven, and we let the devil in heaven all the time. But, yeah, go fuck with Job. Take all his shit, put some diseases on him, kill his family, because that's what happened. And if you go with the religious, nonsensical ideology behind this, you've got a God I'm sorry, that's not God. That's the devil, bro.
Yeah.
This guy's a piece of shit. Is that the guy you really want to serve? The guy that's just like, he supposedly made the devil, or he could actually end the devil's bullshit at any moment, but he just doesn't. He just lets it keep going on. And then he gives the devil the green light to just go fuck your shit up. Like, how dumb are we going to get here? Like, how far down the stupid hole are we going to bury ourselves?
But that's the official story, it seems, globally. I mean, that seems to reflect the general understanding of the Bible. Yeah, the consensus on this thing is just so off, it's not even funny. This
Correct.
is why I love your telling. You can find, I've found these bits and pieces my whole life. Since college, really. I studied, a couple semesters of theology, and it was done in a historical context. It was great. Learned a lot there. But I love your telling of it, because gives people a real sense of how manipulated they are if they don't look beyond that.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
So this divine council or divine assembly, actually some refer to it as the assembly of El. Again, the word El is is a Chaldean word for God. It's actually attributed to Saturn or Yahweh in the Hebrew Bible. And it's a symbolic ruling body consisting of Yahweh, who is the supreme monarch, and various supernatural attendants, as we saw there. And so when you first hear of this divine council, when you're reading through it, because a lot of people don't read through this stuff. Most pastors won't even read about this in church. If they do, they like really skim over it. Nobody asks any questions. But if you really start to dig into it, you're like, wait a minute, this is literally, because I've heard talk about this. People do this. They hear about the divine council and then they read the book of Job. They're like, wait a minute, this is the divine council. Or maybe you haven't heard of it because they don't read about it in church. They don't tell you about it in church. So it may sound foreign to you. But the concept and imagery of this divine council is actually woven throughout all of the pages of the entire Bible. And the more you dig into the subject, the more you actually see how deeply embedded it is, these concepts in the various strata, especially of the Hebrew Bible. That's the Old Testament, everything written in Hebrew, because the New Testament's written in Greek. So all of the stuff in the New Testament in the Greek comes from the original in the Hebrew, right? So if this divine council's there and you've got this Satan, which actually was never a person, an individual specific person, it was just one of the sons of the divine council of the gods who was in the courts of heaven confronting Yahweh, calling him out on his bullshit, basically, right? You get a sense of, okay, we've been lied to, and there's some fuckery here. This Yahweh cat ain't the most high, right? And
so that was the point of Job, the book of Job, do you think, largely?
I think, yeah, it was to show people how it really works, but they disguised it and masked it with their false translations.
Well, yeah, they illustrated it, or they explained it as if you're obedient, God will love you. I think it's the general take.
Yeah,
Job,
they
right?
want to turn you into a slave.
Yeah.
So they have to create a God who's a psychopathic slave driver who just turns crazy people loose on you. Right? That's not Jesus' Father in heaven. This is the exact reason why Jesus said to the Jews in John chapter 8, you don't know my Father, you worship your father, the devil. Now, the word devil, by the way, it doesn't actually appear anywhere in the Old Testament. That's the point I was kind of getting at. You go through the whole thing. You got that word Satan, shaitan, in Hebrew in the Old Testament, and it literally just means opposer. The devil does not exist anywhere in the Old Testament. Even you go back to the Garden of Eden, it's the serpent in the garden who was tempting Eve and convincing her that she should partake of the fruit of something that God said, hey, this is not good for you. You shouldn't do that. There is no Lucifer. There is no devil. There is no Satan in the garden. It's a serpent. Right?
Well, and the serpent represents the movement of the energy up through the chakras.
It does. But there's a bad part. There's a bad, like everything in this world, there's a bad aspect to it and there's a good aspect.
Right, but the balance is in the heart.
There's a fallen energy that can move through your spine. There's also, that's the dark side, and then there's the light side. Remember that it was shown that there's good snakes and bad snakes in the story of Moses before Pharaoh, when Moses cast his staff down before Pharaoh and it turned into a serpent, and then the magicians of Pharaoh came along and cast their staves down. I guess that's about the right way to say it. And those also turned into serpents. But Moses' staff, that was a serpent at that point, swallowed up the serpents of Pharaoh, and then he reached down, picked it up, and it turned back into a staff. That does symbolize the spine. That's the staff, right? But not all serpentine energy, just like not all energy, because all the serpent is just the wave sign. It's the sign. That's where we get the word sin. And in a contract, you have to have a signer and a co-signer. That's why Adam and Eve, there was a sinner and a co-signer. The contract wasn't complete until you had the co-signer, the co-signer. Because Adam and Eve were twins. They're one. Both sides have to fall. And then that's within you too. That's up here in Solomon's temple. And Solomon is Sol Oman. Sol is sun and Mon is moon. It's the temple of the sun and the moon. These are symbols of the sacred masculine, divine feminine, left hemisphere, right hemisphere, right? So when you begin to see that we were lied to about all this stuff being so literal, it's really easy to see how they deceive so many people and why they would do it, because you have to set people free from thinking, oh, this is really deep esoteric shit and it's going to help me develop into a sovereign individual that becomes the resurrected Christ, instead of remaining as a fallen Lucifer, Hespius, the evening star. I want to be the bright and morning star, the I am, right? And we all have that potential within us. But so kind of backing up there a little bit, the word as we know it and the concept as we know it of Satan never existed in the Old Testament. It's not until we get to the New Testament and then you start looking at, and by the way, the Babylonians and Greeks, they believed in the pantheon of gods. And you could see that even in the book of Job, because this goes back, Job is like Babylonian times, right? And you can see that in the book of Job with this council of the sons of the Elohim, the sons of the gods, right? And it was just that the way it was portrayed is that Yahweh, Saturn, was the king of the gods, king of the archons, the archon of all archons in our solar system, or our soul lure system, right? The reincarnation trap. He's the guy running the reincarnation trap, essentially. But the word devil does not appear anywhere in the Old Testament. Not one place. It's translated from the Greek word. We get to it in the New Testament, the Greek word diablo. Even Jesus uses this, Diablo, in the New Testament. And guess what Diablo means? Do you think it means devil?
Oh,
Not exactly. It means
a Lamborghini joke.
It means slanderer. Diablo means slanderer. So we've got opposer, adversary, those two words for Satan, or in the Greek it's Satana. And we've got slanderer from Diablo. There is no Satan. There is no devil. We have opposers and slanderers. And these are archetypal energies, and they can come through anyone at any time. Why? Because all of this stuff is within us. Religion has added so many false definitions and ideologies to these words. Remember the Apostle Paul rightly pointed out in Ephesians 6:12 that we're not fighting against physical entities, but rather against opposing forces in the higher realms of consciousness. That scripture is translated as, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in supernatural places. He's saying that none of these things, not any of the demons, not the guy you call Satan or the guy you call the devil, none of this stuff, they're not people. These are archetypal energies in the realms of consciousness, and they can manifest themselves at any time through anyone. We're not fighting against individuals. We're fighting against spiritual forces. And it amazes me how many times you hear that scripture, Ephesians 6:12, read by religious Christians, and it's totally lost on them. They glaze right over it. That it literally tells them what I just said. Because I'm not changing any of that. I'm not adding anything to it. I'm not twisting any of it. I'm literally reading exactly what it says. The people twisting it and adding to it are the religious people, ignoring what it actually says. Right?
Yeah.
So Lucifer's not the devil. The fallen Lucifer is, and he's within us. Satan can be considered the devil because he is Saturn, or can be, right? That's where we get the word Saturn from, the name Saturn, because he is an opposer, but it literally just means opposer. He's the god of time, law, restrictions, all that. He's an opposer and oftentimes an accuser. And that's his job. Study astrology and Saturn, you'll see all of that. Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to ask me?
Well, no, we're definitely going to want to do a part 2, and I think probably with fewer technical bugs, but I'm wondering if this is a good place to maybe land the plane for tonight. I'm sure you have some party comments.
Yeah, closing.
I'm just thinking maybe we preserve the rest of it for part 2.
Yeah, we can, but I want to say a couple more things about Lucifer real quick before we do, because I don't want to leave too many loose ends there.
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Isaiah 14:12. There's a mention. There's also a mention in Ezekiel of what it's translated as Lucifer in the English translations. Now, Lucifer is a Latin word. It's the Greek, or it's the Latin equivalent of the Greek word phosphorus. And they translate, here's what happens. They translate it into the Latin Vulgate from the Hebrew word Hallel, which is in Isaiah 14:12, which was originally referring to the morning star of the planet Venus, not to a proper name of a fallen angel, right? It's the archetypes that are fallen. And that word Hallel was used, not technically Lucifer. Again, that's a Latin word. There's a lot of stuff lost in translation. And then, of course, the early church fathers in the medieval times and all that, they then personify. Here's where the real flip started to happen during the Dark Ages. They started to personify this thing, this shining one, as a proud angel cast down by God, merging Lucifer with the figure of Satan in Christian tradition as we know it today. And in ancient documents and in even the oral traditions, which are much older than the Bible, Lucifer, again, is referred to always as the morning star, every time. And in the Bible, like I said, you find that exact reference to Jesus, and in the exact spot that you'll find it is in Revelation 22:16. It literally says, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the ecclesia. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star. He literally said, I am Lucifer. There's never been anything in the Bible ever referred to as the bright morning star except for Lucifer, Venus. Right? And once you get out of your head, stop reading the Bible like a cheap ass newspaper, start understanding what it's trying to tell you spiritually. Why does it matter to you what some bearded old, fucking Middle Eastern did 3,000 years ago herding sheep in the desert? Wow, you think that's so? This is an Encyclopedia Britannica. This is written by some jackass a journalist jotting shit down like a newspaper article, like just recording. Well, this happened on the corner of 5th and Main in Jerusalem. Some dude, got healed from leprosy, and the goats walked across the water, didn't even sink. Like, what the hell's that going to do for you? Nothing. It's time to stop taking the Bible literally and start taking it seriously. Because all these people reading it literally are like children, but not the way Jesus said you must be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. They're like dumbed down kids that can't think in any terms except for with the 5 human senses, the carnal mind, and the pleasures of the flesh. And so that we have to anthropomorphize everything. And God's going to come here and set up an adult Chuck E. Cheese, and he's going to sit on a throne and tell everybody what to do. And like, how is that a utopia? I don't know, but that ain't even what it says. Jesus said that ain't going to happen. In Luke 17, he said that's because they asked him, when's this going to happen? He's like, bro, that ain't how this works. That'll never happen. But just to encapsulate real quick too, I want, and we'll pick up on this later, but I want to start getting people to look into the concept of the alchemical transformation, what's called the great work, or the magnum opus. And there are stages to that alchemical process. But before we get to that, let me say one more quick thing about Job, and then we'll move on to that, and then we'll be done. It's a real quick thing. In the book of Job, as you saw, Satan, which is Satan, it just means opposer, was one of the sons of the Elohim, sons of the gods, in that divine council. He's depicted basically as a rebellious outcast. And I'm just mentioning this because I want to make sure people are seeing what I'm trying to say. He's being depicted as a rebellious outcast, but also still as a member of the divine council, in case you didn't catch that. Right? He was one of them invited to go to this council. They were having a deliberation in a council. And one of them raised their hand and said, yo, your boy Job, we got a problem, dude. And Yahweh says, oh, really? I Dino double dog dare you because I believe in my boy Job. Right? So he throws the dice. Does God play dice? You know? And it's interesting that people just don't catch that. And you can't reconcile that in any way that makes sense or that's good unless you read the Bible the way it's supposed to be read, the exact way it's written. When you run it through all these false misinterpretations or these mistranslations and you end up with misinterpretations out of it, that's why you end up with all the fuckery and the cognitive dissonance, and you're trying to make excuses for what the Bible says when it doesn't even say that, because you're starting from the wrong premise to begin with, right?
Well, like you pointed out, even the phrase, God-fearing or, fearing God, that's just not at all the intent. That's not what it meant. But
Correct.
Most people interpret it as it's a good thing to fear God.
Right.
Well, how close are you going to get to God if you are afraid of him? Doesn't make any sense at all.
Yep. And we'll talk about the 4 stages of the alchemical process, but the first one, actually the book of Job and the story. And by the way, Job does lose everything. He gets sick, his kids die, his wife leaves him, his fucking dog leaves, everybody gone. He loses everything, but he gets everything back. What number? 7-fold. Imagine that, right? Just a coincidence again, right? Like, it just, because if you read it like a newspaper, it's like, wow, that's weird how everything just happens in 3s and 7s and 40s all the time. That's so weird. No, it's not weird when you understand it's not literal. It's only weird if you try to read it like a cheap ass newspaper, like an imbecile. So anyway, those 4 stages of the alchemical process we'll talk about next time, which has a lot to do with Lucifer, the true concept of Lucifer, the phosphorus within, the light within, our fallen nature, that covered up light that needs to resurrect within. Job's trials actually mirror the first stage of that alchemical process, which is called the Negredo stage, which symbolizes the element earth and the color black. It's a process of, and this is why the opposer concept is introduced here. The Saturnian or Satan, the opposer concept, is introduced because that's the first stage of the alchemical process of turning lead, which also is symbolized by Saturn, into gold. And that process is one of disillusion, despair, and disorientation. Read the story of Job. That's exactly what happens. Like I said, he loses his wealth, his health, his family. It symbolizes the breaking down of the ego and the stripping away of material attachments. Okay? That's what it's really telling you. It doesn't have some psychopathic, white-bearded, white-robed God on a white throne somewhere on a white cloud throwing dice with his people and letting the devil just wreak havoc on everybody. And after Job endures this dark night of the soul, that I'm sure you guys have heard that term, right? Dark night of the soul.
Oh, yeah.
He receives, like I said, 7-fold restoration, which is symbolic of the 7 chakras, the energy centers, which suggests a full spectrum realignment and spiritual rebirth. So, with that being said, obviously Job's story, you can interpret it in several different ways. That's one of them, but that's the main point of it. But it's essentially an allegorical journey through spiritual purification, where the opposer, Satan, plays that Saturnian role of the initiator, and Job emerges as a transmuted soul, which is the archetype of spiritually awakened human, which is where we're all supposed to go. That's the resurrected Christ. So that's all I have for that. That's a good stopping point. When we come back on the next one, we can pick back up on Lucifer. I want to talk about him as the morning star and phosphorus and get into the aspects of the DNA and symbolism with the Sphinx, which is interesting. The rebellion of light within us, which is the fallen Lucifer, the false external authority, and all of that stuff, and how we got
redeeming of Lucifer. Well, I think that's a hell of a concept.
Yeah.
Redemption of Lucifer. Yeah.
I mean, really, that's all we're doing. We're redeeming Lucifer. You're not redeeming Satan. And again, Lucifer is not a bad guy. In fact, he's the highest amongst all of the angels. metaphorically speaking, symbolically speaking, and he's within you. He's a part of you. Just as much as the I am is. You are the I am. You are the Christ is within you. Jesus said in the Gospel of John, he said, in that day, the day you figure all this out, he said, in that day, you will know that I am in the Father in me, and I in you. Christ is within us. I am is within us. And within, like within, like to the DNA level. I'm dead serious about that. We are the fallen Lucifer. We need to become the resurrected Lucifer, the resurrected Christ. That's what that's all about. And again, Satan is just a term, which is why it's applied to the planet Saturn for one who is an opposer. Now, don't think that just because we said all that and it sounded like, wow, I got the whole complete idea. Don't think you got it all, because there's actually still a lot more to this. So make sure you watch on the next one when we
It's
come
a great
back.
start.
But it's an important time to understand it, because look at the state of things, look at the state of the world. I mean, it truly is biblical, and I just felt it was really important to share this information. And you make it so understandable, and I really appreciate that about you.
Yeah. Well, somebody said in the chat, and I understand why you'd say this. Great perspective, but a little patronizing, I think. I'm not patronizing the people. I'm patronizing the system that created this, and it needs to be done. They need to have their asses whooped, because it's caused a lot of great pain and suffering, and it's deceived a lot of people. That's why I'm such a smart ass about it, because it needs to be done. It's Jesus in the temple with a whip, beating everyone's ass and vandalizing the whole place. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow.
You can't play
Excellent.
patty cake with evil anymore, man. The gloves are coming off.
That's right.
Well,
Now's-
you know,
now's the time.
a lot of shows are kind of boring on this subject matter, and hopefully this hasn't been boring for people. I think that's another point we're trying to make as well. So
Right.
I appreciate Ethan's perspective. So
I do too.
Yeah.
Well, and just to be able to have some real honest talk about this, it's a lot of people are kind of afraid to have conversations around this. There's a lot of
well, some of this is
So
the
much
first time
programming.
I've even heard of it, because after growing up Catholic, and you're going over and over, and it's kind of the same thing, and then you occasionally go to church with your mom because you want to, I bring her there once in a while, and it makes her feel good that her kids go to church with her or whatever. But I've kind of tuned out, because it's just like something really seems off. This is way more intriguing than
it's no matter. I mean, there's a reason why it's the number one bestseller that ever has been and always will be, is because it's the code.
but it's also so misinterpreted.
Super. Well, and of course they did that.
Manipulated.
Right.
We are manipulated in our interpretation.
Well, yeah.
You have to really dig.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, think about this too. Why?
Then you can see the rest of it. Once you
Correct.
get those clues, you can start. That's a really good point too. Go ahead.
Think about this. Remember, and it was talked about for years, if not decades, and I don't think I've heard anybody mention it in a while, but it still remains true. Remember when the whole 9/11 thing happened, and we know who did 9/11. It's the fake state of Israel. They're not the real Israel. The real Israel is a spiritual family. But we know the evil forces that are at the top of that nation state, that war machine, that central banking a nation state that was created through completely heinous means and by destroying and killing so many people. And their time's coming. Again, this is why Q said we're saving Israel for last. But let me get the point I was making. When that whole thing happened with 9/11, there was a lot of people talking about how the purpose behind it, and this was actually figured out early on. This was one of the things that started waking people up, and they started rolling in the Patriot Act, right? And they were like, people were figuring out, real patriots were like, they essentially just needed to create a boogeyman in order to start this war that will never end. Because remember, it literally became the never-ending fucking war. How long did we stay over there in the Middle East and moving around, raping and pillaging everywhere, and then all the other things that came, a little before that too. But all of that stuff, what they did, this is the time when they started talking about terrorists a lot. Terrorists. I can still hear that fuck-faced, demonic little beady-eyed piece of shit George W. Bush, sitting there going, terrorism, 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 terrorist, terrorist, like just pounding it into your head. They needed what's a terrorist? It's an ambiguous ghost-like thing that could be anywhere at any time. You can't ever catch it, but it's a thing. It's an actual thing. This person is a terrorist. We got to go get the boogeyman. We got to get the terrorists, right? This is the same strategy that they used with Satan and Lucifer. And then melding them together created even more confusion, which was even more convenient for them. But they created this boogeyman that because you can never end terrorism. How do you end terrorism? It's not a person. How do you end it? They wanted you to think that Satan and or Lucifer are not only one and the same, but they're a person that you can go after, that you can get, or that you need to be afraid of.
Well, think of the soldiers that went over there with that in mind, and they're killing.
They're killing something that they thought was an actual this person is a terrorist. This person is the devil, right? It's the same exact trick. When in fact, it's a completely ambiguous concept. Anybody at any time can become a Satan. Anybody at any time can become a devil, right? Because remember, it comes from the word Diablo, which literally means slanderer. Yep. So all we're dealing with these two words is Satan means opposer, and devil means slanderer. Lucifer actually has nothing to do with it. They pulled him into it to create even more confusion and screw everybody else up even more. So they use the same trick with the chasing the endless war of go get the terrorists, because they took an idea that was literally just an archetypal energy and encapsulated it into a group of specific people. They did the same thing with this idea of Satan. They took something that was an archetypal energy and they encapsulated it into an individual person, so that we would never be able to, just like we can't ever win the war on terrorism because you're chasing a ghost, you can never defeat Satan because you're chasing a ghost. He's not an individual. He's
I think that's
energy.
really going to bring it together for some people.
Yeah.
I think that really helps.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, could that archetypal energy or that spirit manifest or even incarnate in some people? Yeah, that's what demon-possessed people are, or that's what people that are totally psychopathic and demonic. They're possessed by these spirits, these archetypes. But you can't just go to a physical place called hell where the devil's just posting up in his mansion. Just like you can't go to a physical place called heaven where Jesus is just posting up in his mansion. I mean, think about how incompetent Jesus would be if he said, I've come to fix the whole problem, to defeat the devil, overcome the world, and all the problems in it. And then he just bolts and takes off like some deadbeat dad and leaves us here with the devil and all the problems. And like, well, I might come back in a few thousand years. I felt cute. Might do it later. Might not. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, how much fuckery are we going to accept? Because it's just stupid. Or you can actually read what it really says and it makes sense. The story they feed us doesn't make any sense, and it has Jesus and God, his Father, all looking like a bunch of retarded, incompetent psychopaths.
Wow. Absolutely. So well said.
So
great show. Rough start to a really great show. I'm really
rough start to a great show. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and roll this thing on out of here. All right, guys, you've been watching myself and my two weird friends, Joe and Scott. We're gonna do weird shit again later with this, so make sure you stay tuned and follow for all future show announcements. I'm on X and I'm on Telegram. I think these guys are too. All right, guys, we will catch y'all on the next one. Peace out.